Thank you for joining me for another Quick Hits conversation. I'm Dr. Robyn. I'm a concierge high-performance psychologist providing luxury-level support to executives, entrepreneurs, celebrities, and athletes. With me today, I have Brandon Mahoney. He's the co-founder of LaunchPoint Labs, a national venture firm where he is an expert in creating sales departments. He is known as Dr. Startup. I have Fayaz Nagoor. He is a transformational expert and people-focused leader, building organizational capabilities through innovation and human-centric design. I have Dr. Wayne Buchanan, a geek who loves people and teaching, recovering university professor, and a trainer working with human development professionals. The question today, is it possible to be overdressed in a professional environment? Brandon, what do you think?
Absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind that you can be overdressed in a professional environment. I think of all the times that I myself have been overdressed. One example that comes to mind is early in my career, I was promoted into a management role, and immediately I started coming dressed in a suit, the same way that my VPs were, but all the people that I worked with that were on my team, they wore jeans and a t-shirt. Immediately, I was now a part of the management structure, but I was no longer a part of that cohort of individuals that I was supposed to be working with and mentoring and training. As soon as I started dressing back down the way I was when I was with them, all of a sudden that relationship changed again. So I absolutely think you can be overdressed for a professional setting.
There are two things. One is what you think, how you look. And the second one is what you think, what others think, how you look. So on the first thing, what you think is, I think most of the time we end up like good and perfect because you're comfortable, you're confident, the way that you want to dress up, and you don't care anything. You are under the codes of like whatever the dress code that has been defined by the organization, you are into it, you're absolutely fine. But on the second portion of it, like when you think what others are going to think and then you want to gel with everyone and then you have a style differently, that's where you kind of juggle around between underdress and overdress. Most of the time, you think that, oh, am I overdressed? But there are occasions you're good, you're perfect. A lot of time in the professional environment where you either, as Brandon was saying, either you dress down or you dress up to meet the whatever the environment that needs to be gelled with. So that's my perspective, and the way that you can strategize and define your clothing, it's absolutely works for you.
Wayne, I know you're not big into dressing up. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I tend to toe the line on the dressing down too far edge of things rather than the dressing up too far. But I just had this picture of showing up in a tuxedo. I'm like, yep, there's a line that's been crossed. No one's going to actually deal with that unless that actually is the culture of the organization, that you are expected to be eccentric, and that's part of the deal. So I think the answer really does, as Brandon and Fayaz have framed, it's the culture. What is the expectation of your role, your personality, your position in relation to everybody else? But also there's the whole theory of dress for the role that you want, and it's how you end up in HR wearing a pirate costume. So I don't know.
I know when I was doing a lot of consulting work and working under someone else's consulting brand, their brand was all of their consultants dressed very business professional. So I was wearing business suits and high heels, and it was a little bit weird because we were working in organizations where everybody was dressed in like jeans or maybe just a little bit above jeans. And I could remember at one point where I had gone in to do a training type interview thing with a bunch of mechanics, and they were dressed like mechanics ought to be dressed. And I said to my boss, I'm like, it doesn't make sense for me to go in there wearing 3-inch heels and a power suit. He's like, that's our brand. And I did, but I couldn't connect with them dressed that way. And it took like 3 of the 5 days for my boss to be like, oh, you're probably right. And then I went in dressed more appropriately, and we had a much better reaction, and it was a much better solution. If you show up at an event or a business thing and you're overdressed, then what?
I take off the tie, I take off the jacket. I try to make myself look as casual as possible, but there's really only so much you can do. I would put the onus on me for not having done the research prior to know what the culture, what the environment is like. We had a conversation previously, and it was regarding what has changed since everyone started working at home. And one of the things that I just realized as we were having this conversation was when you would go to a boardroom to present in front of a board, you should find out what is their culture, how do they dress, how do they present themselves, so you can present yourself equally.
Mm.
So yeah, if I'm overdressed, that's just on me to make that mistake.
Mm.
And agreed. And I think for me, I have been in that situation few times, and there's no going back. If I have been overdressed, I think I should be ready to take any criticism. But at the same time, I make up some story to crack jokes, like, why did I wear this? And just like break the ice. And I've done that a lot because I know that I'm on the other side of the fence, or people are looking at me in a different way. But then, yeah, just crack a joke and create a story for the same situation, and you're good to go.
Mm-hmm. On the other side, is it better or worse to be like overdressed or underdressed? If you had to pick one, which would be the better mistake?
I would say overdress. Overdress is a lesser of a concern for me than underdress. And if I have a tux, I can remove a bow tie. But if you're underdressed and going up, it's a little problematic. That's my perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I would agree. I would think they're on the side of overdressing to underdressing. Yeah.
That's always been my experience, with the exception of when you start getting into the black tie situations. I think if you're at something that's supposed to be like a cocktail party type thing and you show up in a full-on like black tie gown, that's probably a mistake. You're better off going a little bit less than cocktail than over. So I think the more dressy the event becomes, the bigger risk there is to being too over the top if you overdress, I think.
Right. Right.
I think it depends. I mean, I'm going back to one of the job interviews, and my wife's like, "Oh, aren't you going to take some nicer clothes?" And I'm like, you know what? No, because I don't want them to hire that guy and I show up. So there are situations going over the top, it sets an expectation. Is that really where we want to be? And I'm going to go back to the cultural fit. If I don't know, I personally tend to lean on the underdress side and rely on personality and interactions to make up for it.
Well, and to be fair, you're a geek, and there's a certain amount of like tech leeway, I think, for if you're in the tech space, there's a little more like, oh, you can show up in jeans and a black turtleneck and we'll all pretend you're Steve Jobs and it's fine. Definitely. Definitely. I want to ask the other question. Brandon, you talked about it's on me to figure out what their culture is and what's appropriate to wear. How do you do that?
So in a selling engagement, you should have a champion. That's your individual that you're working with, that's helping guide you through their sales process, through who the people are that you need to talk to and meet. You should have a good enough relationship with them that you can ask them. Ask them point blank, hey, I'm going to be on site in a couple of weeks. What is the attire that they normally wear? How do they show up to the boardroom? If it's not a sales engagement, the best you can do is your own research. Check out their company website, look to see if they have photos of themselves, try to see if they have videos on YouTube. But that's really just your guess. At that point, you're showing up as yourself, representing your own company and your brand.
I've definitely had that problem when I've done speaking engagements where I don't really have a lot of information. I'll ask the person who books me, like, what at this event, how are these people going to dress? And I've definitely shown up overdressed to speaking engagements, but fortunately in those situations, they're usually in the hotel and I can just run upstairs and get a different pair of shoes or something and kind of make it a little less.
It was a lot of energy draining exercise every day morning when I get up and I think about like what I'm going to wear because I want to go to the office and so on. I think I started strategizing and following up many leaders, like how do they even actually dress and think about it. So I strategized what the simplest way to do it. Like I picked the polo shirts, which is my favorite. And every time if I take a polo shirt, tuck in straight pants, I'm good. There was a time most of the day, like out of 4 days, I used to wear that. And the fifth day, where is the casual day, I would wear a normal shirt, like a dress shirt. Like I was the other way around. I was the other way around. And working for big tech companies, like it was pretty cool. I mean, Google and everyone. You wear t-shirt and jeans, it's cool. That's the environment for the tech companies. But it's not if you work on a consulting company because you meet often your customers and clients and you are supposed to be that way. And I try to be in the dress code system. Like, if the company wants a dress code, I'm okay with that. Like, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And we could get into the difference between dress codes in wintertime when it's cold and summertime when it's hot but cold in the building. But we don't have time to go there. That is our 10 minutes. So thank you so much for having this conversation with me. And I look forward to seeing each of you fully dressed in the future.